Hey guys, welcome back to Willpower Garage. Today we're working on a 2014 Jeep Wrangler, and if you have a check engine light on for a P0128 and you smell coolant, I'm going to show you what it might be. Follow along. Okay guys, like I said, I've got a check engine light on here. This is the 3.6 liter, and the customer brought it in because they have a check engine light on. They were worried about driving it. As soon as I walked up to the car, I could smell coolant. And when I scan the code, I get a P0128, and that is a thermostat rationality. Basically what it means is the thermostat is either not opening or staying stuck closed or vice versa, and the computer sees that as it's not reacting as it expects. So on these models in particular, it's really common for the flange, and I don't know if I can see, if you'll be able to see this just yet, but the thermostat is integrated into the flange, which is right about there. I know it's not coming into focus. You'll see better once I start taking this apart. But that plastic thermostat neck there, it's really common for them to crack. When they crack, they start leaking coolant, and basically you're pulling air into the system, and a lot of times that's why the thermostat isn't reacting the way it should. So this is a very straightforward, easy job to get to. We'll have to take off the air intake snorkel here. I'm going to take the cover just to have a little more space. We're going to drain a little bit of the coolant. I'll probably try to just drain it once I disconnect that hose there, but if you want, make a little bit less of a mess, drain a little bit of the coolant, and we're going to just replace that filler neck. Alright guys, so this is the filler neck. As you can see, the thermostat is integrated into it, comes with the seal. There's the bleed screw there, but usually what happens is it usually cracks somewhere along where this little neck is on it for whatever reason, and then you'll start to see like a crust buildup around this filler neck, and that's sort of the telltale that you have an issue. This one, of course, also threw a check engine light for this thermostat, so we're going to change both of these at the same time. Alright guys, as you can see, taking the air snorkel off there, you can now see what I was talking about. Here's all the crust buildup from this thing leaking. I could feel in the plastic feels very, very brittle, like it's been getting degraded just from the coolant. Sometimes if you're not using the proper coolant in your cooling system, it will degrade a lot of the rubber hoses and the plastic that's here. It reacts with this, so just be mindful of that as well. There is a special coolant that Chrysler calls for the Jeeps, in this engine in particular. I believe it's an OAT, so it's an organic acid, whatever the T stands for, I don't know. So just make sure that you use that proper coolant. There are some aftermarket options there. I think Pennzoil makes one, and I'm not sure. Prestone is the other one. So this is the one I got, Prestone Max. You can see here, Jeep, Ram, Dodge, Chrysler, 2000 and newer. This has the proper coolant in it to that fits into this engine. Alright, so like I said, this is a very easy repair, and there's only 2 mounting bolts here, and then the radiator hose that comes off. The radiator hose has a spring clip, which you can kind of see there. There's the spring clip. So we're going to get that clip off there first, and then the 2 bolts. Like I said, I'm going to try to do this sort of quickly so I don't lose too much coolant. I've got a drain pan underneath the Jeep to catch what comes out, and assuming that that flange surface is okay, which I assume it is, since this uses just a regular rubber O-ring, that I should have no issues. Speaking of the rubber O-ring, I like to put a little silicone-based grease, Vaseline, something on here before I put it on. It helps keep, the seal from rolling over or, just getting kind of funky when you put it on. So it's just something I've always done. All right, let me grab some pliers, 10 millimeter for the 2 bolts, and we'll get that flange off. All right, guys, I'm gonna do my best not to get in the way so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. But like I said, taking off the spring clamp here, just moving it back out of the way, off of the filler neck, keeping it on the hose, obviously. And you can feel when it's past that spot in the filler neck. Sometimes the hoses get sort of stuck onto what they're sealing. And there are special tools for this, but I'll usually use like a flat blade screwdriver and sort of work my way around the hose. As you can see, I've already got some coolant coming out here. I'm going to adjust my bucket quick. Alright, that hose is loose. I'm going to take the bolts off for the thermostat and the flange itself. Like I said, they're 2 10 millimeter bolts. Alright. There's the old one. New one in. And then into place. Get my bolts started. Make sure both bolts are in here before you tighten them down. Get my clamp back on, just to keep this thing from leaking any further. Okay, now last thing to do, torque this down to 105 inch-pounds. Finally dry everything up with a little brake clean. You don't want coolant to get onto your serpentine belt system. If it is a customer's car, you don't want them to have to smell anything burning off or see steam coming off. Brake clean just works really good to dry everything off nicely. Alright, we're going to put some coolant back in because I did lose some. So I'm going to top off the radiator here until I see fluid all the way at the top of the neck. And then what we're going to do is we're going to start it up so we can circulate the coolant around and make sure that it's bled through all the way. The other thing I should mention is you want to make sure there's at least a little bit of coolant in the overflow tank, because when you have a low system, like this probably is going to end up being, when the engine is hot, everything expands, everything like that. What will happen is all the air will migrate its way out, it'll burp out of this, and then as the level kind of comes back down again, as everything contracts, it's going to pull coolant out of the reservoir bottle back into the radiator to make sure that level stays topped off properly. Make sure you don't mix up the antifreeze reservoir with the windshield washer reservoir. They both have yellow caps. Alright, we can put our air snorkel back. I did remove the throttle body electrical connections, so I'm going to make sure I put that back, as well as the air temperature sensor, which is in the snorkel. So make sure that's plugged back in. Otherwise you will get a check engine light. Alright, so I'm going to put the radiator cap on loose here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start this thing up and make sure I don't have any leaks, and then probably top off the coolant level again while it's running. Alright, it's running. I have no leaks. My level is still here. You can see how the level's starting to come up. Usually what will happen is you'll see air kind of bubble up and then the level drop down a little bit. That way you know you have air kind of moving through the system. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this thing run up to operating temperature. Try to get the air out of the system. I'm going to turn the heat on to make sure there's no air in the heater core or anything like that. And once that's all done, it's up to operating temperature, I'm going to shut it off, let it cool down. Once it's cooled down, I'll remove the radiator cap again and check to make sure the level in the radiator cap is okay. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the cap on tight, and I'm going to let this thing get out to operating temperature. Alright, inside the Jeep, I'm going to go while it's getting warm. I'm going to go ahead and clear out the codes with my little generic scanner here. There's the code P0128, Thermostat Rationality. Shows one of two. Second one is the same code, it's just a permanent code. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to erase all the faults and get rid of my check engine light on the dash. So let's see if it goes out. Erase successful. And there's my light off on the dash. Okay, it's been running for a while. I shut it off, let it cool down, and I was able to get the radiator cap off, that it was cooled down a little bit. Just started it back up. As you can see, the level has dropped. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna top this thing off again. As you can see, it did take quite a bit more. That was just the air in the system that had to work its way out. Still have little bubbles coming out of here, but as you can see, there's still a little bit of bubbles coming out. So I'm going to finish topping this thing off and send this thing down the road. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. As you can see, replacing that thermostat housing in the thermostat is super simple on these things. That repair would probably cost you anywhere between $250 to $400 if you had somebody else do it, parts and labor. So, you know, something you should definitely try to tackle yourself. This is a pretty easy repair to do. Also guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my videos. They help me to keep making these videos for you guys. But that's it for today. See you next time.